Welcome back to our fifth lecture in the module on managing and developing people and organizations. To remind, the lecture covers the topics of Week 8, individual characteristics and behavior, and Week 9, recruitment and selection. In this, the fourth section of the lecture, we'll discuss recruitment and selection. The words recruitment and selection are often used in a single breath, as if they are one and the same thing. They're also frequently used interchangeably. However, properly speaking, these are two separate processes. So let's start with recruitment. What is recruitment? Recruitment encompasses all employers' actions that aim to bring a job opening to the attention of potential candidates who do not currently work for the organization, influence whether these individuals apply for the opening, affect whether they maintain interest in the position until a job offer is extended, and influence whether a job offer is accepted. Recruitment is effectively about attracting a suitable pool of applicants. In contrast, selection means choosing the best candidates from that pool. In more formal terms, it means placing individuals into jobs using one or more methods of collecting information about the person in order to determine whether this person is suitable for a particular job. Right, where do we start? We start with recruitment. And where do we start recruitment? By now you should be able to provide the answer. And your answer would be, we start recruitment with work analysis. Work analysis provides the information based on which we can write a job description. And the job description explains the job to candidates and helps the recruitment process by providing a clear guide to all involved about the requirements of the job. And it provides information for a person specification or job profile. And the person specification, what does it do? It states the necessary and desirable criteria for selection. And then, based on job description and person specification, you create a job advertisement. As you remember, you've tried your hand at writing a job advert last week. And so let's today learn more about how to write one. What are the basic principles for a job advert? A job advert should be clear and should include requirements for the job, necessary and desirable criteria for job applicants, so that you can limit the number of inappropriate applications received, the organization's activities, job location, reward package, job tenure, for example, the contract length that applies, and details of how to apply and the deadline. The advert also should take into account its audience, your prospective candidates, and it should attract who you want to attract. To illustrate what I mean, you need to appreciate the importance of the wording of your advert and choose your words wisely. Even subtle word choices can have a strong impact on the application pool. For instance, research shows that masculine language, including adjectives like competitive and determined, results in women perceiving that they would not belong in such work environment. On the other hand, words like collaborative and cooperative tend to draw more women than men. In one study, researchers tested two different wordings of an advert for a retail sales manager position. The masculine worded advert included sentences such as, "We will challenge our employees to be proud of their chosen career," and "You will develop leadership skills and learn business principles." The feminine worded version of the same job advert included sentences such as, "We nurture and support our employees, expecting that they will become committed to their chosen career," and "We will develop your interpersonal skills and understanding of business." When a job advert included stereotypically masculine words, women were less attracted to these jobs compared to the situation when the advert included stereotypically feminine words. Now, to counteract this effect and reduce the gender bias in your wording, you can use special software programs that highlight stereotypically gendered words. Then you can either remove the words and replace them with something more neutral, or you can try to strive to strike a balance by using the same number of gender descriptors and verbs. For example, you can go back and forth between the words build and create. The goal here is to explore how these changes affect your applicant pool. Here's another example. UK organization Business in the Community did a study of young job seekers in order to advise the employers on how to make their opportunities more accessible to young people. The study identified some of the hidden barriers in the recruitment process for young people. While some of these barriers, such as, for example, asking for previous experience, were obvious, others, like the use of technical language, were much more subtle, yet just as off-putting for young applicants. The abbreviations frequently found in adverts, such as KPI, SLA, DBS, HSE, to quote just a few mentioned in the study, and technical jargon such as fulfillment service, procurement, pre-commissioning, talent accounting, make it hard for young people to understand what the role involves and therefore whether it is the kind of the role they would like to do. It also makes youngsters worry that they don't have the required background or knowledge they need to apply for a role. But it's not just individual words and phrases you should be mindful of. You need to avoid long, obtuse sentences. For example, just as it shows on the slide, here's an original text from an advert. Query responses in adherence to SLAs and archiving conducted in accordance to file protocols. What on earth does that mean? Well, apparently, this means that part of the role of the job is to reply to customers' questions and record their details in a filing system. So, you need to tailor your advertisements to your audience. And when you're talking jargon, it's not just the youngsters you need to think about. Anyone applying for an entry-level job is unlikely to be an expert in the industry lingo and would find badly phrased adverts incomprehensible and unfriendly. So, what's the advice? Avoid using industry slang. Write out your acronyms. If you have to include technical terms, add a jargon buster section. And, last but not least, ask your prospective employees to sense check your job descriptions. Okay, so you've got your job advert. Where do you go to post it? Where do you advertise to attract your job candidates? Although most attention in recruitment is usually directed outwards, it's important not to forget the internal talent pool when recruiting. Providing opportunities for development and career progression increases employee engagement and retention and supports succession planning. There are also numerous options for generating interest from individuals outside the organization. These include providing job postings on your own corporate website, using professional networking sites such as LinkedIn, using commercial job boards, recruitment consultants, social networking sites such as Facebook, apprenticeships, a popular option, specialist journals or trade press. You can develop links with schools, colleges, and universities. You can also link with local organizations that make the redundancies. You should not overlook the traditional print, such as local and national newspapers. Of course, many of them are also available online. You can use professional referral schemes. And you can use employee referral schemes, which offer an incentive to existing employees to assist in the recruitment of friends or contacts. This is the list of the most common sources from the CIPD Resourcing and Talent Planning Survey conducted last year. According to the same survey, most popular methods for seeking candidates in the UK, I hasten to add, are employers' corporate website, professional networking sites such as LinkedIn, commercial job boards, and recruitment agencies. However, the most effective attraction methods vary. They vary by employee group. For attracting senior managers, directors, middle and junior managers, and professional specialists, the most effective are search and recruitment consultants. Now, for attracting all other employee groups, that is administrative, technical, service and manual workers, the most effective are commercial job boards. When looking to attract the candidates, you need to take essentially a marketing approach. Think about it as selling the job and do your market research. Think, who are your buyers, so to speak, and where are they? Where can you find the talent you want? And what is important to them in a job, career, team, and employer? It helps to look in the uncommon places. For example, US retailer Container Store says that the first place they look for talent is among their own customers. Who better to join their team than someone who already feels passion and enthusiasm for the company's products? If you're keen on using social media, don't do the obvious. On the most popular social media platforms, like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, you're already vying with your competition for the same pool of expertise. So venture out, connect with other online platforms where people gather for the pleasure of sharing knowledge. For developers, that may be Stack Overflow, a question and answer site specifically for programmers. For the medical field, it may be Doximity. 60% of US physicians are members of that platform. For millennial women, it might be Levo or The Muse. What's the trick? Well, it's pretty straightforward. Go on a platform connected to the industry you're recruiting for, and then look for people who are using the platform to have smart, relevant conversations. If you're impressed by someone's questions, answers, or other posts, you may just have identified a potentially valuable employee. Thinking like marketer in your recruitment also means thinking about your brand, more particularly your company's brand as an employer. According to the data from LinkedIn, 3/4 of candidates research about firm's reputation and employer brand before applying for a job, and 2/3 of candidates would not accept a job in a firm with a bad reputation, even if they wouldn't have a job at all. When a high potential employee checks out a company, the first place they go to is social media platforms like Facebook and LinkedIn, or review sites like Glassdoor. The company presence on these sites is usually owned by marketing or PR. But to reach the potential job candidates, you also need to ensure that your message on these platforms is employee-friendly and employee-centered. Thinking in marketing terms about attracting your candidates also means making buying easy. Make it easy for people who show interest to apply directly. For example, currently, the majority of employers say that job seekers cannot apply for jobs on their career site device. That is wrong. Companies must make applying an easy and user-friendly experience and within the reach of any mobile device. This is particularly true if you want to attract passive job seekers, people who are already happily employed. These are often the recruiter's ideal targets, but they're not likely to return to a desktop later to apply for a job they found on mobile. And, well, this is all that I wanted to tell you about recruitment. Now, let's say you've done a great job at recruiting and have attracted a large pool of applicants. What do you do now? Now you need to select the best individuals from among the applicants. If you have done your homework, that is to say your work analysis, then you will have a detailed list of knowledge, skills, abilities, and other attributes you're looking for. All you need to do is now assess. And how do you assess? Now, just as an aside, why do we assess in order to select? Or in other words, how much do differences matter? In formal terms, this is a question of the variability of job performance. At one extreme, if variability was zero, then all applicants would have exactly the same level of later job performance if hired. In this case, the practical value of all selection procedures would be zero. In such a hypothetical case, it doesn't matter who is hired because all workers are the same. At the other extreme, if performance variability is very large, it then becomes important to hire the best performing applicants, and the practical utility of valid selections method is very large. As it happens, this extreme case appears to be the reality for most jobs. Research has shown that the variability of performance in output among incumbent workers is very large, and that it would be even larger if all job applicants were hired or if job applicants were selected randomly from among those who apply. Here's the evidence on average differences in performance based on all available studies that measured the amount of output for different employees. If we define a superior worker as one whose performance or output is at 84th percentile, that is, one standard deviation above the mean performer, then a superior worker in a lower skill job produces 19% more output than an average worker. A superior worker in skilled jobs produces 32% more output than the average worker, and a superior employee, manager, or professional produces output that is 48% above the average. These differences are substantial, and they indicate that the payoff from using valid selection methods to predict later job performance is quite large. So let's look closely at the assessment methods. How many assessment methods can you think of? Okay, well, to start with, there are tests, obviously. Earlier in this lecture, we have talked about most of this. We have covered general mental ability tests, and emotional intelligence tests, and personality tests. We didn't mention situational judgment tests. These tests present the applicant with complex situational workplace problems, often involving human interactions, and then require the applicant to select the best solution from those listed. We also didn't mention assessment centers. What are these? Assessment centers are effectively combinations of various assessment methods. Individuals assessed through assessment center spend 1 to several days at a central location where they are observed participating in various activities, for example, group discussions, business games, in-basket exercises. Various ability and personality tests are usually administered, and in-depth structured interviews are also part of the most assessment centers. The average assessment center includes 7 exercises or assessments and lasts 2 days. So that's the test. Now, what else is there? Then there is a basic demographic or biographic information that individuals put on their resumes and the organizations ask for in order to screen the potential candidates. You're familiar with most of those, possibly with one exception, something called training and education point method. The point method of evaluating previous training experiences used mostly for hiring at various levels of US government, federal, state, and local. This method means that an applicant receives a fixed number of points for each year or month of experience on the same or similar job, each year of schooling or course taking that appears to be phase relevant, and each relevant training program completed. There's usually no attempt to evaluate past achievements, accomplishments, or job performance. Now, there are also assessment methods that try to tap into past performance. These are basically reports on the candidate from different sources. References is an example of just such past performance assessment method. Then the peer ratings. Peer ratings are evaluations of performance or potential made by one's co-workers. They typically are averaged across peer raters to increase the reliability and hence the validity of the ratings. Obviously, peer ratings have the limitation that they can't be used for evaluating and hiring applicants from outside the organization. They can only be used for internal job assignments, promotion, or training assignments. They have been used extensively for internal personnel decisions in the military and some private firms such as insurance companies. Then there are the descriptions that individuals provide in their resumes about their job experience. Of course, you're familiar with those. The method with which you may not be familiar is something called behavioral consistency method, which refers effectively to past achievements. The behavioral consistency method is based on the psychological principle that the best predictor of future performance is past performance. In developing this method, the first step is to determine what achievements and accomplishments best separate the top performers from low performers. This is done on the basis of information obtained from experienced supervisors of the job in question using special set of procedures. And then applicants are asked to describe in writing or orally their past achievements that best illustrate their ability to perform these functions at higher level. For example, organizing people, getting work done. These achievements are then scored with the aid of scales anchored at various points by illustrative examples. Now, what are the other assessment methods? There are ways also, rather than using past performance, to sample potential performance. Performance in the job for which the person is applying. Work sample tests are hands-on simulations of part or all of the job that must be performed by applicant and the type of sample performance assessment method. For example, as a part of a work sample test, an applicant might be required to repair defective equipment or write a computer code. Work sample tests are often used to hire skilled workers, welders, machinists, carpenters. Of course, this test can be only used with applicants who already know the job or occupation. And then there are job tryout procedures, for example, internships or probationary periods. With this procedure, applicants are hired with minimal or no screening, and their performance on the job is observed and evaluated for a certain period of time. Those who do not meet a previously established standard of satisfactory performance by the end of probationary period are then terminated. Finally, there are assessments that focus on fit. Person-job fit measures assess the degree of match between characteristics of the applicant, such as values, desires, and interests, and those embodied in by the job the applicant is applying for. Person-organization fit measures assess the degree of match between characteristics of the applicant, again, values, goals, desires, and interests, and the values and goals of the organization. These measures do not include any cognitive, ability, or skills component. Okay, so lots and lots of different assessment methods. Right? By the way, are we forgetting something? Of course. There are also interviews. Structured, unstructured, and as a separate category, phone-based. So, all of them in one place now on one very complex slide. Makes your head spin, doesn't it? However, don't worry, we've got it all sussed. We've got all assessment methods assessed. And this assessment of assessment methods comes courtesy of a really monumental work of researchers who have analyzed an entire century of evidence on the validity of selection methods, looking at 31 different assessment methods. We will look now at the comparison between different methods. But how do you compare them? What is the most important property of an assessment method? From the point of view of practical value, the most important property of an assessment method is its predictive validity, that is to say, the ability to predict future job performance. Or, in addition to that, job-related learning, for example, amount learned in training and development programs. And here, all popular assessment methods listed in the order of decreasing predictive validity. And the winner is, drum roll please, the winner is general mental ability, closely followed by employment interviews. If you look at the graph closely, you will see that some popular assessment methods are only half as good as GMA, and others, like years of education, appear nearly useless. You'll say, that is strange, that is counterintuitive. So a bit of explaining is in order. Though these results actually suggest that education doesn't matter. No, this finding does not imply that education is irrelevant, but it is relevant to occupational success, not job performance. Education is an important determinant of the type or level of the job that an individual can obtain. What this finding shows is that among those who apply to get a particular job, years of education do not predict future performance of that job very well. For example, for a typical blue-collar job, how many years of education would you normally get among the applicants? Between 9 and 12. The predictive validity of 0.10 means that the average job performance of those with 12 years of education will be only very slightly higher than for those with 9 or 10 years. In other words, and why do we have here apples and oranges? Well, metaphorically speaking, education allows us to separate apples from oranges. If we have a job for apples, we will obviously only consider apple candidate. If we have a job for oranges, we'll consider only orange candidates. But when we then try to choose which apple is the best for the job, then you need to look at Apple's GMA, not Apple's year of education. A similarly interesting point can be made about the importance of job experience vis-a-vis GMA. Here's the comparative research evidence. First, look at the chart on the left. This displays correlation between job experience and job performance. On the vertical axis, we have the correlation between job experience and job performance. And on the horizontal axis, we have 5 job experience groups differentiated based on the mean job experience. Under 3 years, between 3 and 6 years, 6 and 9 years, 9, 12 years, and 12 years and up. Each bar on the graph shows the average correlation between job experience and job performance across different samples for this particular job experience range. So for years between 0 and 3, just under 3 years, the correlation between experience and performance ratings is 0.49. This correlation then drops gradually to a low of 0.15 for those who have been on the job 12 years or more. Now look at the chart on the right, the correlation between GMA and performance. On the vertical axis, we have the correlation between general mental ability and job performance. And on the horizontal axis, we have the same 5 job experience groups based on the mean job experience. So under 3 years, between 3 and 6, 6 and 9, 9 and 12, and 12 and over. Each bar on the graph shows the average correlation between GMA and job performance for this particular job experience range. So, for 0 to 3 years, the correlation between experience and performance ratings is 0.35. This is considerable, but this correlation then increases to 0.59 for those who have been on the job 12 years or more. So, it grows to even higher levels of correlation. So, taken together, what do these two graphs tell us? They tell us that as workers gain job experience, the correlation between experience and performance decreases, and the correlation between GMA and performance not just remains constant, it actually increases. This means that GMA not only matters during the early stages of job learning, but throughout the worker's tenure, unlike the years of experience. Because of its special status, GMA can be considered the primary personnel measure for hiring decisions, and we can consider the remaining 30 assessment methods as supplements to GMA. That is, in the case of each of the other measures, we can ask, when we use it in combination with a GMA measure, how much does this assessment method can increase predictive validity over and above the validity that can be obtained by using just GMA. This is called incremental validity. So, what other assessment methods add substantially to the prediction based on solely general mental ability? The largest predictor at the very bottom here is integrity tests. These tests are used in business and industry to hire employees with reduced probability of counterproductive work behaviors on the job, such as fighting, drinking, or taking drugs, stealing, sabotage, or excessive absenteeism. Integrity tests do predict these behaviors, but surprisingly, they also predict overall job performance. This largest of incremental validities is due in significant part to the fact that integrity tests correlate nearly zero with GMA. That is to say, they measure something totally different from what GMA measures. The something is probably most likely personality, or rather a particular combination of personality traits. Integrity tests have been found to measure in part the personality traits of conscientiousness, agreeableness, and emotional stability. The assessment method with the second largest incremental validity is structured interviews, followed by unstructured interviews. Based on this data, we can arrive at the best assessment methods combinations, and these are GMA and integrity tests, or GMA and structured interviews. The beauty of these combinations is that both can be used with applicants with no previous experience on the job, that is, entry-level applicants, as well as with experienced applicants. And both combinations are less expensive to use than many other combinations. This is so important that it warrants saying it twice, or to have 2 slides dedicated to the same thing. Your best assessment methods, if you want to predict job performance or performance in training, are GMA test, accompanied by integrity test, or GMA test, accompanied by structured interviews. And just a word about interviews. Employment interviews, can be either structured or unstructured. Unstructured interviews have no fixed format or set questions to be answered. In fact, the same interviewer often could ask different applicants different questions, and there's no fixed procedure for scoring responses. Indeed, responses to individual questions are usually not scored, and only an overall evaluation or rating is given to each applicant based on summary impressions and judgments. That's unstructured. Structured interviews are exactly the opposite on all counts, and in addition, the questions to be asked are usually determined by a careful analysis of the job in question and can't be deviated from by the interviewer. Structured interviews are more costly to construct and use, obviously, than unstructured interviews and require training. And until recently, the available meta-analysis data indicated that unstructured interviews were a less valid method than the structured interviews. But recent reevaluation with more accurate statistical methods seems to have changed that conclusion. Structured interviews are still considered better, but only slightly better than unstructured at predicting job performance. However, they're all both reasonably good and are the second and third best top-up to the GMA tests. Now, we select, using all these various assessment methods, we select in order to choose the best. the best performers, the best employees in terms of the ability to learn on the job and learn in training. But we also select to ensure that we have a diverse workforce. Why? How? Well, that is something that we will discuss in the final section of this lecture, which will be devoted to diversity management. So, when you're ready, please move on to the next recording.